Do you feel the need? The need for leads? The reality for most of us as business owners is that we rely on consistent sales for both business growth and ongoing viability. Those sales don't come from simply throwing content and offers at strangers on the internet. Instead, we need a steady flow of motivated, qualified leads. Inside the Takeoff program, we are currently preparing for Leads at Speed. This is a 2-week event to flood your inbox with those high-intent, hot leads. But if you'd like to join us, the doors to the Takeoff program are closing on the 7th of March. So make sure that you head to tashcorbin.com/takeoff and check it all out today. And if you'd like to join us for Leads at Speed, make sure that you enroll before the 7th of March. That link again is tashcorbin.com/takeoff. When it comes to talking about your offers and pitching your services and products, do you find yourself stumbling over your words a little or struggling to explain just how amazing your offer is? If so, you're going to love today's episode of the Heart Centre Business Podcast because I'm going to share with you how to present a more compelling pitch. And because it's day 6 of Tashmas, I have a lovely little gift for you as well. Now, you can find all the relevant links and the show notes for today's episode over at tashcorbin.com/467 because this is episode number 467. And you'll find the link to today's amazing Tashmas freebie there as well. Let's dive into this one and have you feeling far more confident and competent at presenting a pitch for your products and services. Let's do it. Hello, I'm Tash Corbin, a business strategist and mentor based on the Sunshine Coast in Australia. The mission of this podcast is to help heart-centered entrepreneurs to make more money and in doing so, change the world for the better. This podcast was recorded on the lands of the Gubbi Gubbi and Jinnaburra people. Always was, always will be Aboriginal land. There are a lot of times and places in business where we need to pitch our products and services, whether it be on a sales call, whether it be at the end of a webinar, whether it's in your emails that you send to your mailing list or in your launches, posts on social media, sales pages, on your website. There are a lot of different places where we actually need to be great at pitching our product or service, both in writing and also when we're speaking about it as well. So, what are the ways that we can ensure we're presenting a compelling pitch? Well, one of the most common ways people assume they need to get help with their pitch is to hire a copywriter. Hire someone who can write your sales page for you, who can write your email promo for you, who can help you craft up those offers that you present on social media. And whilst there are some amazing copywriters out there, copywriters actually need from you a lot of information and insight about your product, about your audience, about your core message in order for them to actually be able to craft that compelling message, that compelling pitch. Not only that, a copywriter will write things like sales pages and social content and emails, but then what if you're in a sales call with someone or someone has some questions for you? There's only so much copywriters can do to help you with that pitch. So if you don't have the core information the copywriter needs, then number one, it's going to be very challenging for them to write a great pitch for you. Number two, a copywriter doesn't just follow you around 24/7 helping you with that pitch when it comes up. We as business owners need to learn how to pitch our own products and services effectively. And whilst I absolutely agree that there are certain times where it's a brilliant idea to hire a copywriter to help finesse your offers, to help turn your pitch into an effective sales page, all of those sorts of things, I also think that most people try and outsource that to a copywriter before they've got the foundations sorted themselves. And so what I wanted to do in this episode of the podcast is help you to present a more compelling pitch by breaking down what needs to go into that pitch, what components of your messaging are particularly critical here, and how to bring that together in a way that you have those core pieces. You have those core pieces. So when you go to write the sales page, you know exactly what key points you need to cover. When you're on a sales call with someone and they're very excitedly asking you to explain your program, you know what key points to cover. When you are writing a promo to go into a special opportunity in a Facebook group, you know what core points you need to cover. When you've got the key components clear for yourself, you can write it 150 different ways, but it still presents that pitch in a compelling way. It still ensures that you're covering off those key pieces of information that are empowering to your audience to help them make an informed decision. That is where compelling pitches come from. So let's start by breaking down what components we need to include in order for your pitch to be particularly compelling. Now, number one, we want to ensure that you have clarity on the value proposition of your offer. If you're not familiar with what a value proposition is, it is the gap between before working with you and after working with you, and why that transformation is particularly valuable for me as the buyer. If I was to use my takeoff program as an example here, one teeny tiny component of the value proposition of the takeoff program is around lead generation. So before doing the takeoff program, my ideal clients either struggle to get leads in their business, or when they do have a lead come in, they're not 100% sure exactly how to replicate that again. Either they get referrals and word of mouth, so they don't really know what they can do to proactively bring in more of those leads, or their leads sort of come in haphazardly from online spaces, from social media, from their website, and there's nothing really concrete about the strategy they use to attract new leads into their business. After completing the takeoff program, students know exactly how they can structure their client attraction process to attract hungry, excited, and motivated leads to their business, not just on a one-to-one basis, but also using one-to-many strategies. Not only that, they have validated their lead generation strategies by making sales to the leads they've generated through the program. So you can see there's a big difference between before and after. You're not getting leads, or the leads that you're getting are pretty haphazard. You don't have a strategy to be able to scale that up. And after, you know exactly how to attract qualified leads, and the strategies that you use on a one-to-one basis and a one-to-many basis are validated because you've proven them by having them work. You've used those strategies, you can see that the leads have come in, and those leads have converted into paying clients. Now, why is that so valuable for my ideal clients? Well, it's valuable because once they've got that, they can scale up their audience growth and know it's going to continue generating more and more leads. If you then have a proven strategy to turn audience growth into lead generation and leads into paying clients, then it makes sense and it's worthwhile to invest time and money into audience growth strategies like Facebook ads or being on podcasts or doing other things that grow your reach on social media, grow your reach of your website, looking at your SEO, all of those sorts of things. If we were to spend $10,000 on ads to grow their mailing list before they had a validated lead generation and sales strategy, then there is a risk that they spend that $10,000, they grow their audience, but they don't actually convert that into sales. So you can see the before and after and why that's valuable on one particular component, which is lead generation. Now, the value proposition that I have mapped out for the Takeoff program has over 50 examples like that of experiences people have in their business before doing the Takeoff program, what it looks and feels like after doing the Takeoff program, and why that particular transformation is so valuable. So that is the core piece of the value proposition of the Takeoff program. That's just one little example. And so when it comes to presenting a compelling pitch, we need to, as business owners, understand what those transformative experiences are, what it looks like before, what it's like after, and why that's valuable at the micro level, as well as some more generalized explanations as well. And that value proposition forms a very key part of a compelling pitch, right? So that's component number one, value proposition. The second component is your process. So let's say you see an offer on social media and it says, before doing the Takeoff program, you make no money. After doing the Takeoff program, you make $8,000 a month very consistently. Here's why that's valuable. Here's all the reasons why that would be really cool, right? Like before and after, before and after, before and after. Amazing. If I don't explain how I'm going to get you there, it almost starts to sound like I'm selling snake oil. I'm selling those magic beans. There's no clarity, there's no specificity about the process for us to get from where you are to where you want to be. And if your ideal clients aren't able to not only picture that process in their heads, but also feel confident that they will be able to successfully go through that process, then they're going to have a lot of resistance to purchasing that offer. So the second key component to a compelling pitch is being able to explain your process in terms that your audience understand and that also feels very doable for them. Now, this is where often people trip themselves up by adding bonus after bonus to a lot of their offers. The more things that go into your offer, the more it feels like work. The more it feels like, ooh, I'm going to need lots and lots of time to be able to actually do this thing, to be able to complete all the steps, to be able to get myself to that after. So whilst you might feel like a 16-module program is far more valuable than an 8-module program, if your audience feels like 16 modules is just far too much of a workload for them, you may actually be turning people off rather than getting them excited. This component of your pitch takes some finessing. It really is one of those things where you need to be mindful that you're not just adding more steps to the process to make it seem more complex or maybe make it seem more valuable, but in adding more steps, you actually make it seem like more hard work. If you underestimate or under-explain the process, it feels like you're minimizing what it really takes in order to experience that transformation. And so people will be far more wary of working with you. And it might feel like, oh, I'm not 100% sure this would work for me because what I need to do is different to what you're saying. But if you over-explain the process and you go into far too much depth, then you make it feel like hard work. So that's where it can take some finessing and some practice. Even now, more than 10 years after first offering the Takeoff program, I'm consistently refining how I explain the process that we go through in the Takeoff program and experimenting with different ways of talking about that process and why it's so effective and proven. So just a quick recap. Part 1 of your compelling pitch is your value proposition, talking about before, after, and why that transformation is so valuable. Part 2 is your process. The third part that helps your pitch to be far more compelling is to talk about why you. What difference do you make in that journey from where I am now to where I want to be? Because the cold, hard truth of the matter is that your ideal clients and your audience could achieve that transformation on their own. It might take them longer. It might be a lot more complex. It might have a lot more heartache. They might go the wrong way a few times and waste a bit of money. But it is actually your job to pitch why doing it with you through this particular offer is so much more of a better decision for that person to make. What difference does it make to that journey to purchase that offer? Do you get them there faster? Do you get them there easier? Do you generate a far bigger transformation than if they did it on their own? Do you help them to experience that transformation with less pain, with less suffering, with less costs? Do you save them time? Do you save them money? What is it about working with you that makes such a difference? Here's where things can get tricky and a little uncomfortable. Because when we first start our business, especially when you're selling your services, you're selling your experience, you're working with people as a mentor or a coach or a healer or an advisor, we're in essence selling ourselves, right? Our services, what's in our brain, our support, our intuition, whatever it is that you bring to the table. But when it comes to this part of the pitch for your products and services, it can be very easy to fall into the trap of explaining your qualifications, explaining how long you've been doing this. But that actually doesn't express clearly and explicitly what difference it makes to the client. Some of them may join the dots. So for example, if I say I have been doing this work and mentoring people in growing their online business for 12 years, they will then potentially join the dots themselves to say, well, Tash has been around for a long time. She's seen all of the changes. She's seen all of the shifts. And so therefore she knows what she's talking about. Some people might also be reassured by you saying how many people you've helped before, how many people have been through your program, all of those sorts of things. But ultimately, that's asking the buyer to join the dots. Instead, if you want your pitch to be more compelling, explain the difference that you make to them rather than asking them to just join the dots because you're talking about your qualification or you trained under the best XYZ in the world. Instead of leaving it to them to then come to their own conclusion about what that means, focus on the difference you actually make. Now, another one that I see lots of people refer to is that you'll have someone holding your hand all the way, or I will be a big cheerleader in your corner. Now, that is amazing, right? And I understand why people talk about that so consistently in their offers. But at the end of the day, if the only difference between buying from you and not buying from you is that I do it myself versus I do it with a cheerleader, that's not a particularly valuable difference. And also, if you think about this world of hyper-independence that we live in, for some people, if that's the only difference, well, then they think, well, if that's the only difference, I can suck it up and do it myself. I can do it without a cheerleader. Yes, it would be lovely to have someone in my corner, but ultimately, having someone in my corner is not worth paying an extra $2,500 for or an extra $1,000 for. I'll just do it myself. I'll just buckle down and get it done. And I think also if you are focused on those qualifications or those years of experience, or you're describing your role as being the cheerleader, you are absolutely underselling yourself because that is not the only difference that it makes working with you. Let me once again use the Takeoff program to give you an example of this. So people can absolutely validate their foundations by making sales, and get themselves to consistent 8K months in their business without doing the takeoff program. I don't have tickets on myself that much that I think the only way people can get from where they are to where they want to be is working with me. And I think people would think I was delusional if I actually presented that as the pitch. However, I do know that a big difference that is made by people being in the takeoff program is that they're focused on what the exact thing is that they need to do now, and they can forget about all the other stuff that comes next. Focus on taking it one step at a time, doing this validation in the right order, getting everything set up, sorted and clear, step by step, rather than getting distracted by shiny objects on the internet, shiny strategies. And one of the powerful differences that the takeoff program makes is that by having me as their mentor, because it is such a high connection delivery, if people do see a sexy looking strategy out there on the internet, they always have an open door to come and discuss that with me and say, hey, Tash, I've seen everyone at the moment seems to have these like $9 micro offers. And I've been seeing a lot of messaging that says that you need to have a micro offer in this day and age on social media because getting people on your mailing list with freebies doesn't work anymore. What are your thoughts? And what we do is I don't just dismiss that. We unpack what the benefits and the challenges would be for that person's individual business, the stage of business that they're at, and whether or not that actually fits with their strategy right now, where they're at right now. And so one of the big value adds, one of the big reasons why takeoff makes such a difference to people's journey is that they aren't going round and round in circles with distractions, and they can focus on getting their business foundations validated by making sales and moving to a scalable business model really quickly. I'm not invested in training people to have one specific model versus another. Instead, I help mentor people through building a business and marketing model that is perfectly suited to their personality, perfectly suited to their strengths, their market, and something that's going to make sustainable growing profit. That's something that is scalable for them. And so that's a big difference compared to not being part of the takeoff program. That's something that people often comment on, is that being in takeoff has saved them thousands and thousands of dollars and months of going down different paths, because marketers on the internet are very good at making you feel like the strategy they're teaching is a must do. It cannot be ignored. It needs to be done now. And so having someone to actually help you discern whether that's true for you or not, whether that's true for the stage of business you're at or not, saves you so much time, so much money, so much wasted effort and energy chasing some of these marketing tactics and strategies around and around, when ultimately, for most people, they don't have a marketing tactics issue. They have a foundations issue. And we can make any marketing tactic or strategy work when you have a validated niche, a validated message, and a validated offer. So you can see there, by speaking about the difference that the takeoff program makes, and that's one example of the difference that the takeoff program makes, I'm presenting a far more compelling pitch for the takeoff program. So let's recap. Our three key components of a compelling pitch are value proposition, before, after, why it's valuable, process, what are the steps that we're going to undertake together so I can in my brain see that that makes logical sense. Yep, if we were to do A, B, and C, it's very reasonable for me to expect that after will be available to me if I go through that process with you. And then finally, the difference you make. What is the difference between doing that process alone versus doing it in your offer? Now, the final piece of the puzzle is how you actually present this pitch, because you might be listening to me talk about these different components and think, well, Tash, if I'm on a Zoom call with someone talking about working together and I have 45 different before, after, and why it's valuable, and then I have this process of how we're going to get there, and I talk about the difference that working with me would make, aren't they just going to start to glaze over in their eyes? Because, oh my goodness, like, do I just keep yapping at them? No, right? So this is where the way that you present that offer and where you present that offer is so critical. So if your offer is a $5,000 VIP package and you're pitching it on a sales page, you do have lots of space to actually take people on that journey and talk through a lot of those different components. You've got far more space and time, and you've got far more of people's attention span to be able to present that compelling pitch. But if you're presenting your offer at the end of a webinar, for example, you really want to keep your pitch to 5 to 7 minutes. And so going through every single different angle of your pitch, every single different angle of your value proposition, of the process, of course, you're not going to have the time to be able to do that. And that is where we need to be mindful of the context in which we are presenting that pitch and gathering as much information as we can about what is a priority for those people you're presenting the pitch to versus trying to present your pitch to a very cold audience. So this is where your messaging ecosystem comes into play. We know that there's a big difference between someone who stumbles across you on the internet cold versus someone who's been listening to your podcast diligently for the last year. And they're very, very keen to work with you at some point. The way you would present your pitch to that cold audience person would be very different to if you were presenting that pitch to someone you had that back and forth relationship with and you were familiar with them and they were familiar with you. Which is why your pitch is different in all of those different contexts. In a sales conversation, your job is to ask the right questions so you know which parts of your value proposition are a priority for that one individual you're about to present your pitch to. Your job is to understand where they have tried to achieve this outcome before and why it's failed. What parts of the process you're about to tell them you're going to undertake have they already done? So when I'm having a sales conversation with someone about the takeoff program and they tell me, well, I've already done a lot of work on my niche and I've already hired a copywriter and I've already done a 5-day challenge, and I've already done this, I then don't want to just give them a blanket explanation of what we do in the takeoff program. Instead, because I have asked that question about what they've done so far and I've got an understanding of who they are as an individual, I can then speak to, well, what parts of the takeoff process have they probably already got nailed? We just need to validate it by making some sales. And I can make it really clear that they won't need to undertake every single piece as though they're starting a business from scratch if they've been at this for 2.5 years. Similarly, if I have someone who sent me an email and they're asking about being part of the takeoff program and they're worried because they're not really 100% sure which business they want to start. They've got a little bit of an idea of what they want to do, but they haven't really got a lot of it finessed yet. Well, I can reassure them and explain the early stages of the process where we validate the different ideas that they might have and ensure that there's a market for what it is that they think that they want to do before they go about creating socials, before they create a website, before they go and run webinars. We're going to validate really quickly through a very simple process to ensure that this is a business that has a hungry market. And So for that person, I'm not going to go and tell them all the advanced marketing stuff that we do inside the Takeoff program, because that's going to start to make their eyes glaze over. That's going to make it feel like it's really hard for them. What they are concerned about is, I don't even know if I've got a business idea that's a good idea. So I'm talking about the parts of the process and the value proposition of the program where we are validating not just your business idea, but also that there's a hungry market for it that you can tap into. And you very quickly learn, how do you get in front of those people and how do you invite the people who are a good fit into talking about your work together. So see how the different individuals that I'm talking to about the program have different components of that pitch that I zero in on and then I focus in on. So which then leads us to the logical next question. Well, what if I'm sharing my offer on social media and I don't know who's going to actually be reading that offer? Well, over the years of creating and promoting and selling the Takeoff program, I've been able to discern what are some of the core themes, trends, and patterns within my very, very narrow, very, very specific niche that are common for 90%, 80% of the people who are a good fit for the Takeoff program. And so whenever I'm presenting my pitch, let's say on a webinar, well, number one, I know who's in the room because of the webinar title. So if my webinar is called How to Attract Hot Leads with Low Ticket Offers, which was a webinar that I ran in February, then I know the people who are in that room understand the value of having hot leads, right? They know that that's something that is a gap in their business. So when I'm pitching the Takeoff program at the end of that webinar, number one, I'm focusing in on those things that are themes and patterns I've seen for people within my niche, and I'm focusing in on the key components there. But also, number two, I'm being strategic about the way that I pitch based on the fact that people who come to that kind of webinar are likely more advanced in their journey in their business. So I'm not going to talk about validating your business idea in that particular pitch. I instead will focus on marketing strategy and marketing strategy built on solid foundations, and the difference that getting the foundations sorted early will make to their journey in terms of how quickly they get to profitability, how quickly they validate their messaging and their offers, and how quickly they can then scale up to larger and larger audiences. So that's where we've got to be very mindful of being able to read the room and being able to also curate who's in the room, who is actually hearing this particular pitch, who's reading this particular pitch, what is critical for them out of my value proposition, what is the part of the process that they most feel like they need help with, and what is the biggest difference that purchasing this offer will make that's particularly relevant for that audience. And there you have it. They are the three components to make sure that you've got a very compelling pitch and how to ensure that you're pitching with context. Now, if this is something where you've not really heard this broken down in this depth of detail before, my gift for you for day 6 of Tashmas is going to help further your education around messaging in your business. This is something that it's not necessarily a particularly sexy component of your business strategy. The foundations, getting those basics really nailed, but it is mission critical. The better your messaging is, the more effective every marketing strategy that you try out will be. So if you know that you want to improve your skills around messaging and significantly improve the effectiveness of your messaging in your business, my Tashmas gift for you today is going to be extra effective. It is my messaging makeover training, and you can access that absolutely free by coming and following the instructions with today's episode of the Heart Centre Business Podcast at tashcorbin.com/467. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode. I'll see you tomorrow for day 7 of Tashmas. And until next time, I cannot wait to see you shine. Bye for now.